Hello and welcome to episode 74 of Stitched in Sweden. I'm Maria and you can find me on both Ravelry and Instagram as Stitched in Sweden. I am back today after a very long break over the past 6 months or so. Thomas and I have moved apartments and we moved back in June, but of course before then there was a lot of preparation for moving and that kind of thing. And since we have moved, now it's September, there have been many house projects to do, and I have been spending most of my time doing projects related to the house. So that is where I have been. I have taken a bit of a break from all forms of social media, but I am back now and excited to be podcasting again. I will talk a little bit more in detail about the house projects that I've been doing towards the end of the episode in case you're interested, but otherwise I thought I would just start out with a bit of knitting and sewing, as well as what my future plans for some upcoming projects are for the near future. So let's get started. When I was reviewing the last podcast that I filmed back in April or May, maybe even March, yeah, whenever the last time was, I was just trying to make it a little bit consistent with what or just to try to refresh my memory of what I had told you back then. I kept alluding to a big project that I was going to be working on coming up that my parents were bringing me yarn for from the US, and that is this pullover that I knit as part of the Brooklyn Tweed preview knitters group of preview knitters. So basically preview knitting is a program that I'm involved in where knitters, it's kind of like test knitting, except it's a bit different. You're not knitting the pattern to see if there are any errors in it, although maybe sometimes you find them. It's rather rare in my experience. But you are knitting the projects so that there are some examples of different versions when the pattern goes live on Ravelry, so people can see it on different body shapes and in different colors and in different yarn and that kind of thing. I am one of the preview knitters. Unfortunately, I didn't get this finished, but that's not one of the requirements for preview knitting, so that was all right. This is the Tencel sweater, and this is a pattern from Brooklyn Tweed, but written by Emily Green. And I'm very aware of the little dots of light that you can see coming from my window. I haven't gotten my curtains up yet, so I just have the blinds right now, which are having these little dots of light dance across my face. But yes, just trying to get an episode out there to get back into the swing of things, so maybe next time there will be a bit of a different setup. So this is the Tencel sweater pullover by Emily Green, and you can see that I still have a couple of ends hanging around, and I actually haven't finished completely with the knitting. This pullover also has a kind of big loose collar, which is also in this same lace textured pattern as the rest of the sweater. But it has a dropped shoulder and it's quite a wide sweater. So in the modeled shots on the pattern, the sweater is shown over probably like a white linen dress kind of on the seaside, and it's very romantic and yeah, easy. Looks like it's easy to wear. So yeah, I would really like to finish this, but I haven't yet, and this kind of came up right during the middle of our move. I was trying to get it finished and there was boxes everywhere, and then there was, you know, things that took priority because you have to have plates to eat on, and yeah, stuff like that to unpack first and not necessarily knitting. But I really like this. I knit it out of Brooklyn Tweed Loft, and the color I believe is Sweatshirt. So I have blocked this whole sweater as it is so far, and I blocked it before I sewed it all together. So all that is left really is to pick up around the neckline and knit that collar. On to my next project that I've been knitting. Up next is the Zweig sweater, and this is a pattern by Caitlin Hunter of Boylan Knitworks, I believe it is. I am pretty far along on this sweater. Really happy with how it is coming out so far, and you can see I have finished one sleeve. Again, ends everywhere, and I am just about this far on the second sleeve. I am knitting this in 2 different yarns. The main body yarn that is this kind of speckled, very ever so slightly pink base color with, yeah, little speckles of pink and almost like a yellowy olive green. Every once in a while there's a speck of blue. Yeah, I just really love this yarn, which is from the Wool Barn, and this is the blush color. I had 2 skeins of this originally that I had bought from Maya at the Wool Barn, and my friend here had bought 1 skein in a different batch, so it was a different dye lot. But she offered it to me if I wanted to buy it from her so that I could make a sweater, because I need 3 skeins for a sweater. So I did, knowing that it would be a slightly different dye lot than the 2 that I already had, but I just used, basically I picked 2 of the skeins that were most different from each other and alternated every other row for the main body part here, so it really blended nicely. I think I'm really glad that I did alternate. I think you probably would have been able to tell if I hadn't, but due to kind of the speckly nature of the yarn and everything, it doesn't even stripe. Sometimes when you alternate skeins you get a bit of a subtle striping effect in there, and this definitely didn't do that. But I think there definitely would have been a line if I hadn't alternated where I switched skeins, so I'm happy about that. And then for the yoke, I used a yarn from Fru Valborg, she is a Swedish indie dyer, and this is part of a faded set that she sent me a while back. And I just really love how the yoke part turned out. I think this sweater is super interesting. Well, really, a lot of Caitlin Hunter's patterns are doing this, is kind of incorporating more traditional ideas of, or I think of color work as being kind of a traditional thing, but you don't often see color work incorporated with lace, incorporated with incorporated with lace, incorporated with cables and all of that. So I just think it's fun. This is priority number 1 for finishing. I really only have a little bit of work left to do on the sleeve and it should be done. I would like to be able to wear this fall, and there's really no reason that I shouldn't get it done. And I'm really trying to hold off starting anything else until this is off the needles and ready to wear. I wouldn't want to go too long without knitting a sweater, so my knitting dreams have been mostly sweater projects. I have actually, back when I recorded the last episode, right before my parents came to visit, I bought the loft yarn to knit the tencel sweater, and I also bought 8 skeins of Arbor, which is another yarn from Brooklyn Tweed, and I got 8 skeins of Degas. I think it's Degas because it's like the painter, because I think this is kind of meant to be a ballerina pink color. Degas painted a lot of ballerinas, even though to me this color is definitely more of a, I don't want to say beige because that color just sounds kind of gross, but it is just kind of a warm neutral gray, I would say, with slight hints of pink. And I am planning on knitting another, well, I haven't totally decided what I'm going to make with this yet, but one pattern that I'm considering is another sweater by Emily Green, the same one who I did the preview knitting for, but we'll just have to see. No firm plans on that yet, but I might do a bit of swatching in the near future to decide what those will become. I have another sweater, well actually I have a couple of more sweaters planned. One of them I don't have the yarn for yet because I ordered it very recently from Hey Sister Yarn Co, and when I order with them I like to have it shipped to my parents in the US, so I'll just pick that up when I visit them for Christmas. But I ordered a no frills sweater kit, so that's 3 skeins of their merino fingering base and 3 skeins of mohair for the no frills pattern, which is a very simple but nice pullover. I think it's a raglan sleeve stockinette pullover, and I ordered it in the color Perfectly Pink, so super excited about that. And yeah, the other yarn that I'm holding right here is what I picked up for another sweater. I picked this up at a local yarn store. It's not something that I would have been drawn to. I'm gonna just move a little bit so I get this dot off my face. They're just, how do they move so much? It's not something I would have necessarily been drawn to, I don't think. And basically I picked this out because I wanted to make a sweater out of Drops Air or Cloud, which is a kind of I think it's called a blown yarn, where there's like a net that some fluff is like blown into, and so it makes like a really fluffy yarn. Anyway, that was my original idea, but I am a bit on a Drops boycott at the moment because yeah, I don't need to go into it, but basically I think they have some pretty shady business practices, including stealing designs from independent designers, so I'm not super interested in supporting the company anymore. So I was looking on a website, I think it's called like Yarn Substitutes or something, where you could basically type in one yarn and they would come up with some ideas of something else that you could use, which oftentimes I do through Ravelry, but anyway, this was just another way to do it. And I found this yarn, which is nice and fluffy. It has I think it's a cabled texture, which is a bit different than the Cloud or Air from Drops that I was thinking about using, but it still has a nice halo on it, and it's super squishy and soft. This yarn is 65% merino extra fine and 25% baby alpaca, 10% nylon. I also didn't want a super alpaca heavy yarn because I'm a little bit sensitive when it comes to alpaca. It just makes me itch. So The sweater I'm planning for this one is based on a sweater that I've seen on Pinterest, and I don't have a pattern for it, but I'm planning on figuring it out. Basically, it's a black sweater that has a detailed colorwork yoke. And in the Pinterest picture, it's in a more of a creamy white, but I liked how this marled gray went with it. So that is another plan, which will take a bit more, it will be a bit more involved because I will have to do some calculating. And I did I created a chart for this sweater at some point a long time ago, and I just can't find it anywhere. So, but I have had this sweater on my mind for at least the last year or maybe even 2 years, so I'm excited to finally have the yarn and be able to get started on it. That is really what I have been doing in terms of knitting. Not a whole lot, but it is nice to have a little bit of more time now when we have things a bit more settled in the apartment, even though there will always be projects to do. It's nice to be able to sit down on our couch, which we didn't have a couch for 7 weeks. Nice to be able to sit down on the couch and knit a bit in the evening and just relax. So now I think I will move on to a bit of what I've been sewing and what my sewing plans are for some upcoming projects. First thing I'll share with you is actually not something that I sewed, but something which has been storing my swag. And this is a beautiful project bag made by my friend who is in Stitches Knits on Ravelry and Instagram. And she did this patchwork bag out of some leftovers from, I'm just going to take out these stitch markers which are rattling around. Some leftovers from a like snake stuffed animal type thing, which sounds very odd. Anyway, this like long stuffed snake thing that she uses for her baby to like kind of contain it. I don't know how to do this. I'm just describing this in a really bad way. Anyway, this snake is it's a really cute snake. It's not like a creepy snake or anything. It is made with this patchwork fabric. Actually, she also made a baby quilt out of it. Okay, so I can just go with baby quilt. But yeah, it's just a nice fabric and has a nice kind of denim-y bottom, and then the inside is the fabric that she used to bind her quilt and some linen. I've been using this project bag to hold my swag sweater, and it just goes really well with the colors in the sweater, and sometimes it's fun to have a bit of a coordinating project bag to your sweater. So that's not something I made, but something that is sewn and that I'm enjoying. Something I did make recently at the last minute, which was not my intention, is this pattern by Vogue. This is Vogue 9251, and it's from Very Easy Vogue. It was very easy. I can recommend it to a beginner. I made a, I guess you could say a 12 version of it that I plan on finishing at some point and actually wearing, because I was able to make the necessary adjustments for the fit without any major changes, so that I would have had to redo it, but I had already made it in this kind of pinkish color, so that was really just in preparation for a floor-length forest green dress that I was going to make, or that I did make for my friend's wedding, which we went to this month, at the beginning of September in Mallorca, Spain. So I made this version B, which is the long floor-length version, but I made it with the, what are they called? Fluted sleeves from version A. And I'll put a picture of me in it here. with Thomas, and he wore dress shoes to the wedding, which is wearing tennis shoes in this picture because he drove us there. So anyway, you can see the dress. It is made in a viscose fabric, lightweight viscose that I bought from Minerva Crafts. .co.uk, and I made it in a day while my sister was visiting, because she came with us to Spain actually and was here in Stockholm for a week and a half as well. So I had planned to do it before she came, of course, but then life happened and I didn't get it done, so I worked on it while she was here and was able to get it done, and I'm super happy that I finished it for the wedding. It was perfect. I felt like I was appropriately dressed for the level of formality of the wedding, and it was really nice to have a comfortable, flowy dress for the very warm weather in Spain. So that is one of the projects that I finished sewing, and I'm sure I've sewn a couple of other things since I last recorded, but not that many things, because my sewing machines have been packed, and it wasn't just that my sewing machines were packed, but all of my thread and all of my scissors and all that stuff that you need to sew with were packed. I've started unpacking them. Well, actually, they're mostly completely unpacked and are currently in my studio area, which is our second bedroom of our new apartment, which I'm sitting in right now, obviously. And that is also kind of a half guest room, so my sister was just visiting, so I had the blow-up mattress out, and anyway, for many reasons we haven't been able to set up my sewing space in there completely yet, so yeah, I just haven't had the space or time to sew a lot yet. But I do have a couple of things that I would like to sew in the near future. One is the Carolyn pajamas from Closet Case, and I think I only have enough fabric to make the shorts version. I'm going to use some of my Rifle Paper Co. fabric that I have. I would really like to make the long version at some point, but that might have to be with a different fabric. One thing I really like about this pattern is the piping detail along the edges. You can see it in the illustration as well. I really like that piping detail, and I have some stark white piping that is a little bit too strong of a bright white for the fabric that I want to use, because there's no bright white in the fabric. I'm sure you have probably seen this fabric. This is from Rifle Paper Co. and it's a nice drapey viscose. So this is almost white, but it's actually a blush color, really light, subtle blush. And the white piping that I have is just too strong of a contrast to this. So I am planning on, / have picked out, just not ordered, some dye to try and dye that piping that I have to a very slightly pink color. If it gets to be a little bit more pink, that would also be fine, because I have a lot of other pinks in this fabric. But that's my plan. Anyway, I would really like to sew up those Carolyn pajamas, and if the first version turns out well, I might pick out a different fabric to make the long sleeve, long pants version, because it just seems like it could be really luxurious to have some nice flowy pajamas to lounge about in. So yeah, two other patterns that I'm looking forward to making pretty soon. The Kaley shirt dress pattern, I actually wanted to make this so that I could have it for fall, but yeah, it hasn't happened, and this pattern is slightly more involved, I think, just with the buttons and the collar, so it's not something that I can just whip out in a day or an afternoon, so I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but it is something that I would like to make coming up. I'm still working on kind of rebuilding my wardrobe, you could say. I got rid of a lot of clothes and a lot of fabric, actually destashed some fabric before we moved. So now my closet is feeling very sparse, which is good in some ways because it means that I can now fill it with things that I really like wearing, but on the other hand, it means that I don't have very many clothes to wear. So yeah, I need to get chipping away at building my handmade wardrobe and putting in some key pieces into it. And I also have to remember that I don't have to make everything, even though sometimes I want to. The other pattern that I'm interested in trying out is actually from Berta Style. It's 6829, and it's kind of a wrap dress style. I think that this long-sleeved version, or maybe it's 3/4 length, but I would make it long sleeve. This long-sleeved version could be really nice in just a knit jersey fabric with tights for wearing to work in the fall and winter. I think that could be definitely a nice wardrobe staple. I probably wouldn't make this velvet version, but yeah, I guess velvet is in again, but I probably wouldn't make that. Yeah, so actually the Vogue pattern was one of the first, I think it's the first like big company pattern that I have made, that I've sewn instead of like independent pattern designers. And I was a little bit skeptical at first just because, I don't know why, I just thought it was going to be complicated and maybe the instructions wouldn't be as clear. But that pattern was really easy, as it says, very easy Vogue. It was super simple, and I think one of the things that has intimidated me about these kind of patterns before is that I think maybe I've only ever looked at one pattern, and all of the pieces were overlapping, so it was really hard to know which parts you were supposed to trace, and I was a very new sewist at that time, so I didn't really have a good conceptual idea of what pieces I needed or how they should look. So I think now I wouldn't have a problem tackling any pattern in here, but yeah. Anyway, I thought that was just interesting to mention that that's the first kind of big four pattern that I have made, and then this will probably be the second one. So I might actually think about, I don't know. One of my friends is coming tomorrow, actually, visiting from the US, so I won't be able to sew this weekend, but I'm not sure I really have the fabric that I would want to use for this either, but I might look and see if I have something that could work for this, just to get a nice wear-to-work dress finished that I can enjoy now when it's getting a bit cooler. This is like a super simple dress that I wore to work today with black tights, and I didn't make it, but this is like kind of a example of something that I would like to make some more of, just to have a little more variety. And I think this with the wrap style and like this like I don't know if this is called like a tulip skirt or something, could be an interesting, kind of like an interesting feature of the dress rather than just a totally plain dress. So those are my plans for sewing in terms of garments coming up. I'm also planning on making some pillow cushions, pillow covers for pillowcases for our bed. I have many projects, like I said. One of them is going to be making a headboard, tufted headboard, with some kind of velvety, I hesitate to call it blush pink, but it is kind of like a blush pink. velvety fabric for a tufted headboard. And I have some linen fabric that I would like to make for pillowcases, which kind of coordinate with that. Anyway, that's a whole huge project because we need a car to get the plywood to build the board before I can even begin doing the fabric part. So I'm not really sure when that's gonna happen. I also bought fabric, the same fabric, to build a stool, a tufted stool for the end of our bed. And so far I only have the fabric and the piece of wood for that, but no legs, which, you need legs for benches. But now I guess we're kind of shifting into house projects that I've been working on, so I'll just give you a brief update. So we moved into this apartment in the beginning of June. June 8th, I think, was the day we moved. And we basically doubled in size from our previous apartment, which was around 34 square meters, to this one, which is 68 square meters. So it's been really nice to have more space, just not only for day to day, but also when we have visitors come, they can have their own room, and we just have more space to eat dinner, and we don't have to be all on top of each other, and there's just, there's a lot more space, so it's nice to be able to spread out and not feel so crowded. We also really like how much light there is in this apartment. Maybe you can tell already. Of course, this shot is a lot bigger than the space that I recorded in before, but we have windows on 3 sides, whereas before we only had windows on the, I guess it was kind of northeast facing side. Now we have we have everything except south facing windows, which means that we get nice morning sun and afternoon sun, but it's light really throughout the day in our apartment. Of course, I'm sure in another month or two I will be back to complaining how dark it is, but that's winter in Sweden. But right now I have the blinds in front of me totally down and still have a lot of light, even though it's around 6:30 in the evening now, and I think the sun will be heading down pretty soon. So mainly the projects that took a lot of time in the beginning were painting. I painted this whole room. It's a light bluish gray color. It's gray, but has kind of a blue tint to it. And this is frost. In here I painted just the walls and the trim. And in our second bedroom, I painted the ceiling, the walls, the trim, and the radiator. And then in our bedroom, I painted the walls, the trim, and the ceiling. So, and oh gosh, how could I forget? Because it's like a nightmare. In our bedroom, we had wallpaper that I thought I was going to be able to paint over initially, but it wasn't in very good shape. And as I started trying to repair some holes in it, I just realized that I needed to rip it all down, which took a whole week in itself. Luckily, we were able to have our bed in our second bedroom at that point, so I could just close off that room and kind of forget about it. But yeah, that was a horribly messy, terrible project, and I'm afraid I will never use wallpaper because that was such a nightmare to take down. But now it's painted and I'm really happy with how it turned out. We did some rearranging in our room too, so we moved the wardrobe, and I've we have basically an IKEA wardrobe, so I've reorganized that with some new drawers and stuff, and it feels really satisfying. So now it feels like a very welcoming space for all my new clothes that I'm planning on making soon. Yeah, been doing some lighting stuff. We still need to do some more with the lighting, but yeah. But next time I hope to talk to you a lot sooner than I did this time. And thank you for saying hi while I've been gone and for all the well wishes. So until next time, which I hope